The man I fell in love with lied to me from the very first moment we met. He gave me a fake name, a fake story, and when I found out who he really was, I should have walked away. But here's the thing about falling for someone who sees you when no one else will. You start making excuses. And some of those excuses, they'll cost you everything you thought you believed in. My name is Amanda, and I need to tell you this story. Not because it has a clean ending. It doesn't, but because I think some of y'all might understand the choices I made, even if you'd never admit it out loud. Let me take you back to where I was 3 years ago, 27 years old, living in my dead father's house in Atlanta, and basically existing as Denise Harper's unpaid maid. Denise, my stepmother, the woman my dad married 2 years after my mom passed from a sudden heart attack when I was 17. Denise was all warmth and smiles in the beginning, cooked Sunday dinners, braided my hair, called me baby girl like she meant it. She came with her own daughter, Brianna, who was a year younger than me and had this way of sizing up everything in a room like she was calculating its resale value. Things were okay for a while. Not perfect, but okay. Then, my dad died. Car accident on I-85 during a thunderstorm. I was 21, orphaned twice before I could legally rent a car. And that's when Denise's mask came off. Your father left everything to me, she told me the night of the funeral. Still in her black dress, arms crossed in the kitchen. This house, the restaurant, everything. You want to stay? You work. I was too numb to fight. That numbness cost me more than I can explain. 6 months later, there was a kitchen fire at my dad's restaurant. I'd been working the closing shift alone, something Denise insisted on. The grease trap caught, and before the sprinklers kicked in, flames had crawled up the wall and found me. Burns, deep, cruel burns that started at my left jaw and trailed down my neck toward my collarbone. Denise showed up at the hospital with an insurance adjuster. Not flowers, not a prayer. An insurance adjuster. She collected nearly $200,000 from that fire. I collected scars. After I got out, she handed me a hoodie and a scarf. Keep yourself covered. The last thing I need is folks pitying us because of your face. Those words carved themselves into me deeper than any burn. For 3 years, I became a ghost. Cooked, cleaned, did laundry, managed the whole household, while Denise and Brianna spent the insurance money on designer bags and spa days. I wore long sleeves in Atlanta's July heat. I kept my hood up even indoors. I stopped looking in mirrors. Every morning, I'd wake up, and for about 3 seconds, just 3, I'd forget. My hand would be on the pillow, my eyes barely open, and the world would feel normal. Then my fingers would drift to my face, the smooth skin on the right side, the tight ridged texture on the left, and I'd remember every single morning that 3-second amnesia followed by the crash. It's a special kind of cruelty. Rediscovering your own damage before your feet even hit the floor. Now, I know what some of y'all are thinking. Girl, why didn't you just leave? And you're right to ask that. My friend Jasmine offered me her spare room twice, and both times, I said no. I told myself I was staying because that house was my father's, because leaving felt like abandoning the last piece of him. But honestly, I think I was afraid that out in the world I'd have to face people with this face. At least in Denise's house, I had an excuse to hide. She gave me a cage and I decorated it and called it home. I'm not proud of that, but I need you to understand it because it matters later. And then, on a random Tuesday in October, I heard someone dying in an alley, and I made a choice that changed everything. I was walking back from Kroger, hood up, bags clutched against my chest, taking my usual route through Virginia Highland, the one with fewer people. That's when I heard it, a groan, low and ragged, coming from the narrow gap between a dry cleaner and a boarded-up bookshop. Most people would have kept walking. Atlanta's alleys aren't exactly known for their hospitality, but I'd spent 3 years being invisible. 3 years knowing what it feels like to need help and find none. So I hesitated, then I stepped into the shadows. A man was slumped against the brick wall, one hand pressed hard against his side. Plain clothes, dark jeans, gray hoodie, no jewelry. His face was half hidden by the angle, but I could see blood seeping between his fingers. He was Asian, Korean, I thought. Young, maybe early 30s, but with a hardness around his eyes that made him look like he'd lived twice that. Sir? Sir, are you okay? His head lifted slowly. Dark eyes met mine, sharp despite the pain written all over his face. You should go, he said. Accented, but clear. Controlled, even with blood leaking through his fingers. This isn't your problem. You're bleeding. I'm aware. I was already kneeling, pulling off the light jacket I wore over my hoodie. Let me see. He caught my wrist. His grip was strong, way too strong for someone who looked half-conscious. I said, "Go." And I said, "Let me see." I looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm not leaving you here to bleed out behind a dry cleaner. So either you let me help, or you can explain to whoever's looking for you why you're still lying here in an hour." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or curiosity. Like he wasn't used to people pushing back. Slowly, he let go of my wrist. I worked fast. The wound was a gash across his ribs. Deep, ugly, but not the kind that kills you if it's treated soon. I pressed my jacket against it, keeping my hand steady even though my heart was hammering. "You need a hospital," I said. "No hospitals." "Then you need someone who can stitch this." "I have people." "Then why are you sitting in an alley alone?" He didn't answer that. Instead, his eyes drifted to my hood, to the shadow where my scars began. I felt his gaze trace the edge of what I'd spent 3 years hiding, and instinctively, I tugged the fabric lower, but he didn't ask. He didn't stare. He just looked back in my eyes and said, quietly, "Why are you helping me? You don't know who I am." I pressed harder on the wound, focusing on my hands. "Doesn't matter who you are. You're hurt. That's enough." He studied me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Just barely, a faint curve at the corner of his mouth that softened everything hard about his face. "What's your name?" Nobody had asked me that in months. I almost didn't know how to answer. "Amanda." "Amanda," he repeated, like he was turning it over. "It suits you." A pause. "You can call me Jay." I'd be lying if I said helping him was purely selfless. I need to be honest about that, because this whole story falls apart if I'm not. Yes, he was bleeding. Yes, I couldn't just walk away. But part of me, a part I didn't fully understand until later, helped him because it was the first time in 3 years that someone needed me. Not my cooking, not my cleaning, not my silence. Me, my hands, my presence, my choice to stay. And that feeling, it was more addictive than I want to admit. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Jay already knew exactly who I was before I ever stepped into that alley. Jay found me 3 days later. I was coming out of the same Kroger, because apparently my life had exactly one route, and there he was, leaning against the black sedan that looked like it cost more than Denise's house, parked right there on the curb like he owned the street. "You," I said, stopping short. "Me," he agreed. He looked different. Healthy, no trace of the man who'd been bleeding out behind a dry cleaner 72 hours ago. But his eyes, those were the same. Quiet, intense, like he was reading a page no one else could see. "How did you find me?" "I'm resourceful." He pushed off the car and walked toward me. "I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life." I applied pressure to a wound. That's basic first aid. Most people would have walked away. You didn't. He gestured toward the little cafe across the street. "Let me buy you coffee. As a thank you." I should have said no. I knew that. A strange man who showed up bleeding in an alley, who wouldn't go to a hospital, who somehow tracked me down 3 days later. There were red flags everywhere. I could see them. I just didn't want to. "I don't drink coffee." "Tea then?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Fine. 1 cup." That 1 cup turned into 2 hours. Then into a second meeting 3 days later. Then a third. A fourth. Jay never asked about my hood, never pressed me about what I was hiding underneath. He talked to me like I was just a person, not a tragedy, not a charity case, not Denise's scarred stepdaughter. He asked about my favorite books. I told him I loved Maya Angelou. He asked about my dreams, and for the first time in years, I said them out loud. I wanted to open a community center for at-risk youth someday, a place where kids who'd been told they didn't matter could find out they were wrong. He listened, really listened. Not the way people listen when they're waiting for their turn to talk. The way people listen when they actually care what you're saying. And slowly, carefully, like putting weight on a broken ankle, I started to trust him. I still didn't know what he did for a living. He'd changed the subject whenever I asked, smooth as silk, like he'd had a lot of practice dodging that question. But I noticed things. The way waitstaff got nervous when we walked in. The way people cleared paths for him without being asked. The occasional glimpse of a tattoo at his wrist when his sleeve rode up. And I wasn't naive. I knew he was powerful, probably dangerous, but he'd never been anything but gentle with me. And after 3 years of cruelty, gentle was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I chose to look away. I need you to hear that. I wasn't tricked into ignoring the signs. I saw them, and decided they didn't matter. Because Jay was the only person in my life who made me feel like I still existed. And when you've been invisible that long, you'll bargain with just about anything to keep being seen. One evening, we were walking along the Beltline as the sun dropped low over Midtown, that golden hour light that makes even Atlanta's parking garages look beautiful. Jay stopped walking. I stopped too. "Why do you keep coming back?" I asked. "You don't know me." "Not really." He turned to face me. In that amber light, everything hard about him went soft. "I know enough," he said. "I know you helped a stranger without asking for anything in return. I know you've been hurt, but you haven't become cruel.
I know you see people. Really see them."
He paused. "That's rare, and it matters." My throat tightened. "You don't know what I look like. I know what you are." And that matters more. For a long moment, we just stood there. The city buzzing all around us, and the world somehow shrinking to just us two in the fading light. Then my phone rang. Denise's name on the screen. The warmth drained out of me like someone pulled a plug. "Where are you?" Her voice was shrill enough to leak through the speaker. "I've got people coming over tomorrow and nothing is ready. Get your useless self home, now." The line went dead. I lowered the phone, my face blank. The mask I'd worn for 3 years, slipping right back on. "I have to go." Jay's jaw tightened. "Amanda, whoever that was, the way she spoke to you, you don't deserve that." I couldn't look at him. "You don't know what I deserve." And I pulled away and disappeared into the crowd before he could say another word. 2 weeks later, I got invited to the kind of party that changes your life. And Denise, she got invited too. That's where everything blew up. But before I tell you about that night, I need to tell you something about Denise. Something I didn't understand until much later. Something that doesn't excuse a single thing she did, but might explain it. Denise Harper wasn't born cruel. She was made that way. Same as a lot of people, I guess. Before she married my father, Denise was a single mother living in a 2-bedroom apartment off Campbellton Road. Brianna's biological father, a man named Terrence, had beaten Denise for 4 years before she finally got out. She'd worked 2 jobs, survived on food stamps, and still managed to keep Brianna fed and clothed and in school. Say what you want about Denise, and believe me, I've said plenty, but she clawed her way out of hell with her bare hands. When she met my dad, I think she saw safety for the first time. A kind man, a house, a restaurant that actually made money, stability. And when he died, when that stability vanished overnight, something in her broke. Not in the way that makes you soft, in the way that makes you vicious, the way a cornered animal bites. I know this because I heard her. One night, about a year after the fire, I couldn't sleep. Crept downstairs for water and heard this sound from the kitchen. Denise was sitting at the table in the dark, crying. Not her usual performance crying, not the kind she did at church for sympathy. This was the ugly kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and hollow. "I can't go back to that," she kept whispering to herself. "I won't. I can't." I stood in the hallway and listened, and something cracked open in my chest. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet, and honestly, I'm still not. But recognition. I knew what fear sounded like. I heard it in my own voice every morning. And here's the part that's going to make some of y'all mad at me. The fire. The investigator said the grease trap had been tampered with, and Denise had the only set of keys to the restaurant that week. And she collected $200,000 from the insurance while I collected skin grafts. I know how that looks. I've spent 3 years telling myself the story where she did it on purpose. But grease traps malfunction. They just do. It happens in restaurant kitchens all the time. And I wasn't there when it started. I was in the back doing inventory. I don't know what really happened. I've gone back and forth on it 1,000 times. And I still don't know. I'm not excusing what she did to me after. The way she treated me, the things she said, the way she erased me from my own life. None of that is okay. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't understand it. Just a little. Fear makes people into monsters. And Denise? She was terrified. I sometimes wonder if I'd been in her shoes, broke, traumatized, suddenly alone with a daughter to protect, would I have been different? I want to say yes, but I don't know. And not knowing, that haunts me more than the scars. But understanding someone doesn't mean they won't try to destroy you. And at that gala, Denise did exactly what Denise always does. The invitation came on a Thursday, thick cream cardstock edged in gold, addressed to the household. Denise snatched it from the mailbox before anyone else could breathe on it. You are cordially invited to an exclusive charity gala hosted by the Kwon Foundation. Black tie, Friday evening, 8 o'clock. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. I would be honored by your attendance. Signed with a single letter. K. Denise didn't know who K was, but she knew money when she smelled it. Within an hour, she'd maxed out a credit card on a dress for Brianna and booked a makeup artist for both of them. The next 24 hours were nothing but chaos. Rehearsed conversation topics, YouTube tutorials on how to network with wealthy people, Brianna practicing her laugh in the bathroom mirror. Nobody mentioned me. Of course they didn't. You'll stay home and make sure everything's perfect for when we get back, Denise ordered, adjusting her earrings in the hallway mirror. And don't even think about stepping outside. Last thing I need is you embarrassing us. I didn't argue. I never did. I just stood there in the kitchen doorway and watched them leave in a cloud of perfume and entitlement. But something shifted in me that night. I can't explain it exactly. It was like a wire that had been bending for 3 years finally snapped. I was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of shrinking. Tired of letting fear run my whole life. I went upstairs to my little attic room and pulled out the one nice dress I still owned. A simple navy gown that had been my mother's. It was outdated, sure, but it was beautiful, and it was mine. I didn't have an invitation. I didn't have a plan, but I was going. The gala was held at this stunning glass and steel event center in Midtown. I almost lost my nerve when I saw the line of black cars and women in gowns that cost more than I'd see in a year. But I'd come this far. I found a service entrance around back, slipped in behind the catering staff, and made my way to the main hall. The room took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers, an orchestra playing something elegant and slow, champagne everywhere, and this energy, this low hum of power and money and people who knew they mattered. I stayed near the walls, watching. I didn't even know why I'd come, maybe just to prove to myself that I still could. Then I saw him. Jay? Except he wasn't Jay. Not here. He stood at the center of the room in a perfectly tailored black suit. His hair styled, his entire presence radiating the kind of authority that made everyone around him smaller. People deferred to him without being asked. Women hung on his every word. Men shook his hand like they were grateful for the privilege. This wasn't the man who'd bled in an alley and let me press my jacket against his ribs. This was someone else entirely. And the name people kept saying wasn't Jay. It was Kevin Kwon. My blood went cold. I'd heard that name before. Not often, not in my circles, but enough. The Kwon family, real estate, nightclubs, tech ventures, and whispered rumors about where the money originally came from. Kevin Kwon wasn't just wealthy. He was the kind of powerful that made other powerful people nervous. I turned to leave. I needed to get out of there, needed air, needed to think, and I walked directly into Denise. Her face twisted the second she recognized me. What are you doing here? She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. I told you to stay home. Look at you, wearing that old rag like you belong here. Her voice rose. People started turning. Do you know how humiliating this is? Denise hissed. Brianna materialized with a champagne flute, a grin spreading across her face. Oh my God, she actually showed up in public. Somebody call security. The laughter around us was worse than any slap. I felt that familiar shame crawling up my spine. Hot, suffocating. The same shame I'd carried for 3 years. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to do what I always did. Is there a problem here? The voice cut through everything. Quiet, but with the kind of weight that silences a room. Kevin stood 3 feet away. His expression was completely unreadable. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits waited like shadows. Denise's entire demeanor flipped like a switch. Mr. Kwon! No problem at all. This is just... She's nobody, a household worker. I don't know how she got in. She's with me. 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words, and the entire room went silent. Denise blinked. Excuse me? Kevin didn't repeat himself. He stepped past Denise, past Brianna, and stopped directly in front of me. His eyes met mine, and suddenly, I understood. Jay, Kevin, the wounded stranger, the man who'd spent weeks earning my trust over cups of tea and walks along the Beltline. He'd known. He'd known everything. Who I was, where I lived, what Denise had done, all of it. You, I whispered. Me, he said softly, that same faint smile. I told you I was resourceful. He extended his hand. Dance with me. And look, I know how this sounds. I know it sounds like the part of the story where the music swells and everything becomes a fairy tale, but that's not what I felt. I felt angry. I felt confused. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me, and nobody had bothered to warn me about the fall. But I also felt, and I hate admitting this, chosen. For the first time in my life, someone was choosing me. In front of everyone. In front of the woman who'd spent 3 years telling me nobody ever would. I took his hand. We danced. The orchestra played something slow, and I let him lead me across that floor, acutely aware of every whisper, every stare. "You're angry," he murmured. "You lied to me." I omitted. "There's a difference." "Is there?" I pulled back enough to look at him. "Because from where I'm standing, you decided who I was worth to you before I ever got a say." Something shifted in his eyes. Not guilt exactly, but acknowledgement. "I wanted you to know me," he said. "Not my name, not my money, just me." "And you couldn't just introduce yourself like a normal person? Normal people don't have my last name." He paused. "When I saw you that day on the street, the way you walked through their cruelty without breaking, I knew you were different. Then you saved my life without expecting anything. You talked to me like a person, not a position. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" I didn't answer, because I was thinking about something else. He'd had me investigated. He'd known about the fire, about Denise, about the insurance money, about all of it. He'd watched me like I was a case to solve. And I couldn't decide if that was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me, or the most controlling. "I need a minute," I said. "Amanda, I need a minute." I pulled away and walked to the edge of the room, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city lights. My hands were shaking. Everything in my life, every single thing, felt like it was built on something I couldn't trust. Denise's love that turned out to be a cage. Jay's kindness that turned out to be a plan. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I reached up and lowered my hood. I didn't do it for Kevin. I need you to understand that. I did it because I was tired. Tired of the fabric against my skin. Tired of hiding. Tired of letting a piece of scarred skin decide who I was allowed to be. If nothing else in my life was real, at least this could be. Me, standing in a room full of strangers, with my face uncovered for the first time in 3 years. The gasps were immediate. I heard Denise's voice somewhere behind me. "Oh my God, look at her face!" But it sounded far away, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. The scars were there, trailing from my jaw down my neck, textured tight against my dark skin. This was me. My truth, my damage, my reality. Kevin appeared beside me. He didn't flinch. Didn't look away. He raised his hand and traced the edge of my scar with his fingertips. So gently, I almost couldn't feel it. "Beautiful," he said. "Every inch of you." And I broke. 3 years of tears came out of me right there in that ballroom. I'm talking ugly crying. The kind you can't control. The kind that sounds like something tearing loose. He pulled me close and held me, while a room full of Atlanta's elite stood there in stunned silence. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." That night should have been the end of the fairy tale, the part where the music swells and the credits roll. But real life doesn't work like that, because 2 days later, I found out exactly why Kevin Kwon had really come looking for me. It was Marcus who slipped. Marcus Cho, Kevin's right-hand man, the one who'd been lurking in the background since the beginning. I'd stopped by Kevin's office downtown to return a jacket he'd lent me at the gala. Marcus was on the phone in the hallway, and he didn't see me. "Yeah, the Daniels property on Peachtree," he was saying. "Kevin wants to close before the zoning board meets. The daughter's the legal heir. That's the whole play. Denise's claim won't hold up once we..." He turned and saw me, and his face went white. I didn't need him to finish. "My father's restaurant, the land it sat on. Prime real estate in Buckhead, worth God knows how much now with the new development going up. Denise had claimed it through my father's estate, but I was Emmanuel Daniels' only biological child. If the deed transfer had irregularities, and knowing Denise, it probably did, then I was the legal heir, and Kevin needed the legal heir on his side to close the deal." I stood in that hallway and felt the floor drop out from under me all over again. He found me 20 minutes later, sitting in my car in the parking garage, staring at nothing. "Amanda, let me explain." "Explain what? That you came looking for me because of a piece of land? That's how it started." "Yes." He didn't flinch from it. I'll give him that. My team identified the property months ago. When we found out about the inheritance dispute, We looked into you. That's when I learned what Denise had done, what she'd taken from you. So you, what, pretended to be hurt in an alley so I'd feel sorry for you? The injury was real. The location wasn't an accident. He paused. I wanted to meet you, to see what kind of person you were. And then I met you, and... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked unsure of himself. And then it stopped being about the land, he said quietly. I know how that sounds. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I need you to know, what I feel for you is real. The business came first, but you came after, and you changed everything. I stared at him for a long time. The worst part, I said slowly, isn't that you might have used me. The worst part is that even right now, sitting here with proof, part of me is already looking for excuses, already telling myself maybe the business thing came first, but the feelings came after. Maybe both things can be true. My voice cracked. And I hate myself for that, because I swore I'd never be the girl who makes excuses for someone who hurts her. And here I am, doing it again. Kevin reached for my hand. I let him take it, and I hated that too. So there I was. The man I loved had lied about who he was. The woman who raised me might have tried to kill me. Or might not have. And the only person who'd never deceived me was my dead mother. I had to make a choice. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag and disappear into the night like some character in a movie who's too proud to accept that life is messy. I thought about it. Believe me, I thought about it. But I'd spent 3 years disappearing, and I was done with that. Instead, I made a phone call. See, there's something I haven't told you yet. For the last 8 months, during those long nights in my attic room after Denise and Brianna went to sleep, I hadn't just been staring at the walls, feeling sorry for myself. I'd been working, quietly, secretly, using a cracked laptop I'd bought for $40 at a pawn shop and the neighbor's Wi-Fi that reached my window if I sat in exactly the right corner. I'd started freelance transcription work online. Didn't pay much, a few $100s a month, but I'd been saving every cent in a separate account Denise didn't know about. And more importantly, I'd been researching property law, inheritance rights in Georgia, deed transfers, probate disputes, hours and hours of reading, night after night, until the legal language stopped looking like a foreign alphabet and started making sense. I knew my father's will had problems. I'd known for over a year. The deed transfer to Denise had gaps. Missing signatures, a notarization that didn't match the timeline, provisions that contradicted my father's original trust documents. I'd screenshot everything I could find in Denise's filing cabinet during the hour she was at church. I had copies stored in 3 different places. I just hadn't done anything about it, because knowing your rights and having the courage to fight for them are 2 very different things. But sitting in that parking garage, with Kevin's confession still ringing in my ears, something clicked. I was done waiting for someone to save me. I was done being the plot point in somebody else's story. Denise's victim, Kevin's project, the sad girl in the hood that everyone pitied or mocked or tried to fix. I was going to be the one who fixed it, on my terms. The lawyer's name was Patricia Webb, a no-nonsense woman I'd found through a legal aid clinic's website during one of my late-night research sessions. She'd agreed to a consultation months ago, but I'd kept pushing it off. Not anymore. I'm ready, I told her over the phone. I have everything. Within a week, Patricia had reviewed my documents and filed a civil suit against Denise for fraudulent transfer of property and misappropriation of estate assets. The evidence was solid. Not airtight. Patricia was honest about that, but solid enough to get a judge's attention. And then I called Kevin. I know about the Peachtree property, I said. I know that's why you came looking for me. And here's what's going to happen. I'm taking back what's mine. Through the courts, with my lawyer, on my terms. If you want that land after I've secured it, you come to me as a business partner. Not as my boyfriend, not as my savior. You bring a fair offer, and we negotiate like equals. That's the only way this works. There was a long silence on the other end. And us? He asked. I don't know about us yet. I'm figuring that out. Another pause. And then he said something that surprised me. Okay. No argument. No power play. No trying to charm his way around it. Just, okay. And something about the way he said it, quiet and simple, made me think that maybe, the part of him that loved me was real after all. Because a man who only wanted the land would have pushed. Kevin didn't push. He did offer his legal team. I said no. He offered to cover Patricia's fees. I said no to that too. This was mine. My fight, my father's legacy, and I needed to know I could do it without anyone else's money or muscle propping me up. The case took 4 months. 4 ugly, exhausting months of depositions and document reviews, and Denise's lawyer trying to paint me as a mentally unstable, ungrateful stepdaughter who was fabricating claims for a payday. Denise herself showed up to every hearing in her Sunday best, Bible in hand, playing the grieving widow who'd sacrificed everything for her late husband's difficult daughter. But the paperwork didn't lie. The signatures didn't match. The notary timeline didn't hold up. And 3 former employees from my father's restaurant, people who'd been too afraid to speak while Denise held the purse strings, finally came forward. The judge ruled in my favor. The property was mine. I didn't celebrate. Not the way you'd think. I sat in my car outside the courthouse and cried. Not happy tears, not sad tears, just tears. The kind that come when something you've carried for so long finally gets set down and your body doesn't know what to do with the empty space. Now here's the part that's going to start an argument, and I know it. I did not pursue criminal charges against Denise for the fire. Patricia told me I had enough circumstantial evidence to push for an investigation. The tampered grease trap, the insurance payout, the fact that Denise had the only keys. She said a prosecutor might take it on, but I kept coming back to that night in the kitchen. Denise crying in the dark. I can't go back to that. And I kept coming back to my own uncertainty. Maybe she did it. Maybe she didn't. Maybe the grease trap malfunctioned on its own, and Denise just saw an opportunity in the aftermath. I'll never know for sure. And I wasn't going to destroy someone's life on a maybe. Not even hers. Some of y'all are going to say I was too soft, that she deserved prison, that I let her off easy. And maybe you're right, but I'd spent 3 years watching what cruelty does to a person. What it did to me. What it did to Denise. And I decided I wasn't going to add more of it to the world. Not on a guess. The civil judgment took back what was mine. That was enough. It had to be enough. Denise lost the house. She lost the insurance money. What was left of it, which wasn't much. Brianna's credit cards stopped working. Their social circle dried up. Last I heard, they moved to Macon. I don't keep tabs. As for Kevin, and this is where it gets complicated, because when is it not complicated? I stayed. I know. I can already hear half of y'all yelling at your screens. But listen, I stayed because I looked at every relationship in my life and realized that none of them had started clean. My father married Denise out of grief and loneliness. Denise married my father out of survival. My mother, God rest her, married my father when she was 19 and he was 32 and had just started making money. Love is messy. It starts in strange places and grows in directions nobody plans. Kevin came to me because of a piece of land, but he stayed because of something else. And I chose to believe that the something else was real. Not because I was naive, but because I'd earned the right to make that call for myself. Did I forgive him completely? No, I'm not sure I ever will. There are nights when I lie next to him and wonder if I'm just another asset he acquired. There are mornings when he brings me coffee and I think, this is the most genuine person I've ever known. Both things live in me at the same time. I've made peace with that. We negotiated the Peachtree property deal 6 months after the court ruling. Fair market value. Clean contract. Patricia reviewed every line. Kevin got his development. I got enough money to do something I dreamed about since I was 21 years old. The community center opened on a Saturday in March. I named it the Nicole Daniels Foundation after my mother. It sits in one of Atlanta's most underserved neighborhoods. A place where kids who've been told they don't matter can walk through the door and find out they're wrong. I gave a speech at the opening, stood in front of a crowd with my scars uncovered and my voice steady, and said the thing I'd been too afraid to say for years. That your damage doesn't define you. That the lies people tell you about your worth aren't the truth. That standing back up is the only thing that matters. Kevin watched from the back of the room. I found his eyes and smiled, and I meant it. Mostly. But here's what I think about sometimes. Late at night when the center is closed and the city is quiet. My mother's name is on a building funded by a deal with a man whose money isn't entirely clean. A man who came into my life with an agenda and fell in love somewhere along the way. Or says he did. Would my mother be proud of what I built, or would she be horrified by how I got here? I choose to believe she'd understand. That she'd look at the kids walking through those doors and decide the good outweighed the gray. But I don't know. I'll never know. And that's the thing about this story. It doesn't have a clean ending. I didn't ride off into the sunset with the perfect man. I didn't get the fairy tale revenge on my evil stepmother. I made choices. Some brave, some questionable, some that I'll probably be second-guessing for the rest of my life. So that's my story. And I know what some of y'all are thinking. Girl, you should have left that man the second you found out. And maybe you're right. But I also know some of you are thinking, I would have done the same thing. And that's the truth nobody wants to admit out loud. When you've been invisible for long enough, you'll forgive almost anything from the person who finally sees you. I'm not asking you to agree with my choices. I'm just asking you to understand them. I'm going to leave you with this and let y'all fight it out. 3 questions, and I want your honest answers, not the polished ones, the real ones. 1. Was I wrong for not pressing charges against Denise? Or was walking away the stronger move? 2. Is Kevin's love real, or am I the most well-spoken fool on this whole platform? And 3, and this is the one that really gets me, if you were invisible for 3 years and someone finally saw you, how far would you go to keep that feeling? How much would you forgive? Be honest, because I think the answer says more about us than we want to admit. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, anything, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, your story isn't over. The best chapter might just be the one you write yourself.